Good morning, everybody. We appreciate everyone being here, and especially now that we're in the new season. Unfortunately, California has 4 of them. It's earthquakes, floods, fires, earthquake, flood, fire, and power loss. So overnight we went from fire season to flood season, but we appreciate you being here. We're going to do something a little different. Everybody needs to take out their ID because we're going to be wine tasting, or no? No, bring out your ID. But we do have Santa Rosa JC's Wine Studies program as our breakfast sponsor, so I want to introduce Kevin C. to you. He's going to come up and talk about the JC's show farm. Thank you very much.
We are the Santa Rosa Junior College Wine Studies program. We've got 3 minutes, so let's start with our video.
Here, in the heart of Sonoma County wine country, would you expect a learning institution committed to the region's future? SRJC Wine Studies, focused on the real-world practical skills wineries are hiring for now, with knowledge passed down by accomplished industry leaders, an immersive, experiential approach to education, centered around a 365-acre classroom, complete with vineyard and working winery. In partnership with the SRJC Viticulture Program, students get the foundational knowledge and personal connections to begin their journey towards a successful and rewarding career. Wineries have easy access to ready-to-work team members with intimate, hands-on knowledge of winery operations. The people of Sonoma County have an accessible path into a thriving local economic driver. And Sonoma County reinforces its position at the forefront of exceptional and always improving wine quality. SRJC Wine Studies, growing the next generation of great wine industry professionals, improving the lives of people, and helping to make our community, local economy, Sonoma wineries, and the products they craft better forever.
So, we offer degrees and certificates in 4 programs that we're bringing up here shortly. There we go. Viticulture, winemaking, wine marketing, that's general wine marketing, and wine hospitality and direct-to-consumer marketing. We also have, each semester, we also have an exciting announcement, and that is a new joint program with Sonoma State. Students will come to the junior college and take wine production and grape growing classes, and then transfer to Sonoma State for a degree in wine business. So the press release was coming out this week. It also looks like we may have some scholarships connected to that program as well. So keep that in mind for your recent high school graduates, please. First semester, we have 10 to 15 classes in wine. We serve 300 to 425 students each semester. You can come and take a class. Most of our classes are in the evenings because most of our students work. And we welcome community members coming and taking classes. So here are a few of our offerings. In addition to our classes, we make 4 award-winning wines: Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, Syrah, and Chardonnay. These wines are a great bargain because they're top quality, but as an educational institution, we have to price them a little bit low. People's perception is that the quality's not there, but our supervising winemaker, Mark Stupich, makes sure the wine quality is fantastic. So, where can you get these wines? Oliver's and Bottle Barn, both carry them. We'd also love to have you join our wine club. There are cards at the table, and if you'll fill those out and leave leave that card on the table or with us in the lobby when we're done, we will love to put you on the mailing list and or sign you up for the wine club today. If you'd like to come and taste the wine, we have a free tasting at Schoen Farm out on East Side Road, the College Farm, on Saturday, December 14th, 11 to 3. Tasting is free. Come buy holiday presents like olive oil and honey and other farm products as well. And we'd love to see you out. We'd love to pour the wines. That card looks like this. If you'll just check off either joining the wine club or just getting on our mailing list, we would love to inform you about future events. All the proceeds of our wine sales go back into the program and help the education of our students in the county. So, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. You know, it's another example of us trying to keep our youth here in our community. So one of the things that we're looking at is educating our youth for careers here locally rather than sending them out locally. So it's a great investment in our local education system, that investment in our youth and keeping our community together rather than having people leave the area. An example of that would be one of the things I think we're going to hear from David McCuan about is all the different tax measures and the cost of living here in Sonoma County. So certainly any effort we can make to keep people here in our community, we would appreciate it. You know, an example was, I think yesterday I was getting gas and was looking at, there's a label now on the pumps that says exactly how much the taxes are, and it calculated it all out. The fees here in California per gallon is just over 79 cents for taxes and fees, which makes it per gallon. So makes it a little expensive. We have a lot more tax measures coming up, so David McCuan certainly going to talk about that. One of the things, I was out looking for a smart TV the other day, and I cannot find a smart TV. How many of you have a smart TV, right? You can stream things. Any of you, I'm trying to find a smart TV that the volume will increase when it detects that I'm eating food on the couch. They're not that smart. So, but I do notice that when I bought the smart TV, the one that cannot detect when I'm eating on the couch, there's an electronic fee. So you have to also pay another tax when you want to get rid of the TV, but you got to pay it in advance. So, but again, that's why we have David McCuan here to talk about upcoming politics, talking about upcoming sales tax revenue, sales tax issues, and kind of where our state is going. So with that, I want to bring Brian up and talk about policies that we're watching and the advocacy that the Alliance is doing on everyone's behalf. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Eric. The last couple months of the year with the holidays, most of the councils kind of die down, and the fun, the more entertaining meetings are the selections of the mayor and vice mayor. So if you haven't watched, those are always pretty good. And if you haven't heard, the new vice mayor in Santa Rosa is Victoria Fleming. Windsor is changing their mayor, vice mayor tonight. Rotor Park last week, and Jake McKenzie was put in as vice mayor. Joe Calamare, this will be Jake's, I don't know, 53rd time as being mayor or something. I think he holds a Sonoma County record for being elected mayor. But and the other things I've mentioned in the past, the REACH codes are certainly probably the most debated topic. Windsor's passed theirs. Santa Rosa's passed theirs. There's a lawsuit going now in Windsor to stop it, so we'll see how it all plays out. Healdsburg was trying to do their final passage on Monday night, and I did not hear how that went. But that's the all-electric REACH code we talked about, and there's way more to be seen on that. Yesterday, I do want to say a couple things. One thing really, David McCuan and his staff at City of Santa Rosa Planning Department have been working on updating the downtown station area specific plan, or in short, up downtown. And that's exactly what it means. We want to build up, we want to get some development downtown, residential, commercial combination, all sorts of different things. It's a very intriguing plan. It was at the City Council yesterday afternoon in conjunction with the Planning Commission to move that forward, which it is. And like any of these plans, it's a process, and there's probably a few more months till this is finalized, but it sets the tone on where we want to go downtown. There's still plenty of time for input. I encourage everyone to take a look. It's a great plan, and I thank David and his staff for all they've done. A couple Alliance business things. It's the end of the year. Our prepaid breakfast that we've done, for those of you know or don't, it's you pay for the whole year in advance. There's a little bit of a discount. You know, we're $25 a month. but the prepaid is $250, and you're automatically registered. You pay the $250 for the year. You don't have to do another thing. There'll be a badge waiting for you every month. And if you have an alternate, I'm not opposed to doing that, but like a little email in advance. So try to make it easy for you, because that's usually easy for me, and we encourage everyone to consider doing the prepaid. It's the same in 2020 as it has been in 2019, $250 a year. A reminder, being January 1st is New Year's Day. I don't want to be here all by myself, so we're going to meet on January 8th, and we'll have a good presentation. It's our annual meeting. The census group is going to be here. In the month of March is the census. It's really a critical census as far as how much money comes in. And if we've ever seen the need for money coming to our county, we've witnessed it the last 3 years with the disasters. And frankly, the data that comes from the census helps influence those kind of numbers when we need them. So we need to get as accurate as a count as we can possibly get and get everybody counted. But we'll talk about that in January. Lastly, you've seen my emails the last week or so. We're preparing for a strategic plan update. We last updated our strategic plan. We did a 5-year plan in 2012, so or 2013. We're certainly ready to do that again. It starts with a membership survey, and my goal is to get 200 surveys submitted, and the deadline is at noon today. And at 5 o'clock last night, we had 159. So you got 3 hours. If you haven't done it, it takes 5 minutes. I want 41 more surveys. And there'll probably be a quick little e-blast at 10 o'clock saying you got 2 hours to go. So please, try to get me 41 more and we'll hit my 200 goal. With that, happy holidays. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, Brian. I can't stress enough how important that survey is to us. As we start making strategic plans and looking at where the Alliance is, where it wants to go, and where it's been in the past, that survey helps us with the demographics in regards to who our members are, what activities they're involved with, what their occupations are, what their interests are, and how we can best serve our members. So please fill out that survey if you haven't already done so. And if you have, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. So I want to introduce some new members that have joined. Tim Ricker with the Town of Windsor. Is Tim here? There he is. Thank you. Herman G. Hernandez is Hernandez Consulting. I saw Herman in there. Mary Pat, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Mary Paternoster. Is Mary here? She's with South Point Self Storage. Oh, good. Don't tell her I mispronounced her name. Steve Kovanis with BC Engineering. Steve here. Dan Sharp with Regan and Sharp. Dan here. So again, we're a membership organization. Feel free to bring guests and introduce them to the Sonoma County Alliance, and as well as encourage them to join. I do want to introduce our guest speaker today. It's Dr. David McCuan. He is professor and department chair over at Sonoma State University with a concentrate. Oh, I'm sorry. Got out of the habit. Last month we didn't do it. All right. Who's got the mic? Brian does. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys don't want to do it all at once, though, like we did last time, right? Why would Brian Botari, Comcast.
And Laura MacArthur with Burrell Jean Reyes Consulting Engineers.
So our tradition is to take the guest cards, draw a guest, and then provide them with a bottle of wine. Unfortunately, the JC is sold out. Okay, we don't have a bottle, but can you ask David have to share it with 140 people. All right, back to where I was, which was introductions, and it was Dr. David McCuan, again, professor, department chair over at Sonoma State University, joined the facility at SSU in 2003 with an expertise in two broad areas, American politics and international relations. His doctorate was granted by the University of California, Riverside in 2002. He does research in two areas, state and local elections and the study of terrorism. A little linkage there, I don't know. I guess we're going to find out. His teaching responsibilities include courses in both international and national politics, international security and terrorism, state and local politics, and campaigns and elections and political behavior. He was a Fulbright teaching scholar in 2009 to 2010, working in the Department of International Relations and European Studies at the Masaryk University, Czech Republic. And Dr. McCuan is fresh from Europe as of your flight arrived at 2 a.m. this morning, I think it was. So we really appreciate you being here and full of energy. So I'll give the microphone to you.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be with you. I'm on European time, so I'm ready to go. Although there should be beer here. All right, so I'm going to provide you an update that's kind of from 35,000 feet all the way to local. A lot of material. I tend to do two things. One is give you a lot of data. So if you want the slides, just email me. If you have a complaint, call the president of the university. She receives regular calls anyways, so you might as well join the crowd. Or call my dean. Not that dean, my dean. All right? And I guarantee to say something that will tick you off, so I look forward to that. But there will be no question that you can ask that will embarrass me or be a problem or anything like that. So we ready? All right. And it's nice to see so many friends and longtime associates and former students. It's wonderful to be with you all. Okay, so we'll look at where we are in terms of politics and the lessons. Everything I'm going to show you is designed to educate you about how to make informed decisions when you're looking at data related to the elections of next year or the things that happen 61 days from now. And what to pay attention to. That's certainly important when you're looking at things like the supervisorial race 3, district 3, when you're looking at these tax measures. So the idea is to inform you. At the end of the slides, there are a series of places where you can get everything that I have here. I will do that. I've included some past materials in terms of changing demographics and included a whole bunch of new material related to what's happening in DC and the dynamic there, and also how that affects the state. Also, we run a mathematical model that has a series of variables between 40 and 42 variables, up to 48 variables. They're mostly economic variables. These are variables that predicted that Hillary Clinton would be President of the United States. So everything I've taught you so far that you'll see and will demonstrate is wrong. Thanks. Nice to be with you. In addition to that, that model today, when I was running it in Germany yesterday on the plane, it runs a series of what are called Monte Carlo simulations, 100,000 possible outcomes of the presidential election. It shows the President of the United States winning re-election with a 71% likelihood. That model a month ago showed 78%. So the model has come down. There are two key drivers of that model. One is the state of economic conditions, and we look at those regionally. So we look at things like Home Depot sales receipts. We look at things like Board of Equalization receipts. We look at what's happening within an economy, a sub-regional economy, kind of like stuff that Rob Eiler, who some of you know, would look at. So we're not looking at state level stuff. We divide California, for example, into 6 regions. In addition to that, we look at Gallup presidential approval, and the Gallup presidential approval number that the president has as of today, or as of Monday, is 43%. It was 44% the week before. As that number is above 41%, so it's 42% and above, the Gallup presidential approval number, combined with that economic number, shows him with a high likelihood of success, regardless of the nominee. But there's some conflicting factors there. One is that the generic ballot test, the Gallup.com generic ballot test, is the highest in history, meaning
the vote or preference for the out party or for change, that number is between 13 and 15%. We've never seen a number that high. So there's something about this guy and about his economic record and about his personal whatever proclivities and things that mask what's going on underneath in a highly volatile environment. So here you go. 90 shopping days left, and 61 days until voting begins in Iowa. So when voting begins in Iowa, what happens in California? Absentees start here as well. All right? So we're really in the thick of it. It's 61 days, which is why the Germans and Europeans are so interested in what's going on here and why you should be so interested. So we are in the thick of it. And as you can see, things are going to change rapidly. So you have to pay very close attention to the calendar, which means you have to pay attention to Big Mo. And obviously Kamala doesn't have Big Mo. Right? This is momentum and how that works. This is who's leading the Democratic primary. This is a poll released this morning from Morning Consult, NBC News, this morning at 4 a.m. So where do Kamala's voters go? They go to Joe. But where do her campaign insiders go? Right? Her campaign had two sets of people. It had Joe Biden moderates and those that were woke. Those are not Sanders voters. The insiders in her campaign, the younger people in her campaign, those are Warren supporters. All right? So what happens here is can Joe Biden take over or take advantage of this? I just did 2 interviews in the car before coming in with the Washington Post and the Washington Times about where these folks go. And they will go to Biden if he can take advantage of them. But really, they're going to flow not so much to Sanders, but to Elizabeth Warren, which will maybe kickstart her campaign, which has kind of gone in the doldrums. This puts a tremendous amount of pressure on Mayor Pete to win Iowa and win New Hampshire, the whitest electorates in the country. All right, let's be very clear about that. The whitest electorates in the country. That means the calendar becomes very important because what's the third primary? That's in Nevada. And where do people vote in Nevada? They vote in casinos on the second floor, and they're Latinos and Latinas. And they will not vote for Mayor Pete. And then we go to South Carolina, which is an overwhelmingly African-American electorate, and they will not vote for Mayor Pete. So Mayor Pete has to grab some mojo early because he stands to then try to overperform, if you will, in the next 2 primaries headed into Super Tuesday. So he's got to do well in Iowa, he's got to do well in New Hampshire to grab some momentum because then he needs to just do better than expected in either Nevada or South Carolina and heads into Super Tuesday where a whole slew of states vote. So that gives you kind of the big emphasis for what's happening for the guy who's got the mojo at the moment. And Joe Biden needs to kind of float along. This puts us in the middle of March and headed to April Fool's Day. With a Democratic race that is unsettled, with an unlikely frontrunner, but someone with a plurality of votes. It looks to be a dog's breakfast. Okay? It looks to be a mess headed into April Fool's Day. That advantages the president, at least in the short term, because the president's raised a hell of a lot of money. And that is helpful for him moving forward. Here were the early November Iowa predictions. She stalled, Bernie's still pissed, and Mayor Pete Mayor Pete is surging in that state. But Iowa voters are fickle. And here's what you have to pay attention to Iowa. Who would likely win against Trump is a component of the national race, but it's less important to Iowa. And Iowa has some unusual proclivities. This is how predictive Iowa and New Hampshire are to the final outcome. It is different for Republicans and Democrats for the final outcome. Iowa has been more helpful to Democrats recently, as you can see, and overall has been more helpful for Democrats. But again, that all-white electorate in a changing economy and a changing country and changing demographics plays an important role. So lay out the broader picture. In 2016, you had the last election of the old coalitions, the old Republican Party, the old Democratic Party, and 2024 is the first national election of a new majority-minority nation. That makes 2020 the pivot election. It makes the election where Me Too adds a volatility to the race, where the Parkland shooting and the high school students and young people adds a volatility to the race, where it adds volatility based upon issues
if you will, the threat of terrorism, the threat of security, the threat of things or events happening which are not in our model at all. We can't provide that component. So there's a volatility to this particular election, combined with a guy who's the most negatively perceived president in US history, with an electorate that's highly agitated and volatile and voted at large numbers in 2018. But when we go back and look at 2016 exit poll data, we saw that those emerging voters who tended to be younger, more mobile, more urban, more diverse, they voted for Bernie and then sat out the presidential election. 92.6 million of them. 93 million people. So if you're the incumbent, what you want to do is tweet a lot. He tweeted 140 times the first week of impeachment. He tweeted 188 times the second week of the impeachment proceedings. You want to tweet early and often because you want to suppress turnout as much as possible. You want the right people voting. And 2/3 of the electorate, 2/3 of the regular habitual electorate looks like Oakmont. Okay? 2/3 of the regular habitual electorate are white voters who have nothing else to do but vote. And the other component of the electorate are those emerging episodic voters who voted in droves in 2018 in the midterm election because they were pissed. And they were particularly young women of color. So as you go to the census, have your census folks here in January, what you need to pay attention to are what are called the exurbs, the emerging suburbs. EXURBS. And I'll show you some data here related to this, particularly in the 3rd and within Sonoma County overall, to look at these particular voters. Because these particular voters have a disapproval rating of the president that's 50% higher than his overall approval disapproval rating. It's the highest. So suburban women of color, suburban women with some college of color, go to Starbucks regularly. Their current search of Joe Biden as of last week was Joe Biden and motorcycle jacket. That was their current search that you can run on Google Analytics. All right? So the degree to which Joe Biden can grab those voters who are interested and anti-Trump within their Facebook feeds of opinion leaders, these are all things I can do from my laptop right here, and that you can do from your laptop using Google Analytics. The degree to which those voters can be grabbed by an old white guy named Joe Biden will determine the level of, or the outcome of the election. But our model shows it's still all about economics and presidential popularity. All right. Here's what happens in terms of Iowa and New Hampshire. So what you have to do, what this graphic shows you, is just you have to do better than expected. Remember the comeback kid? 1992? That was Bill Clinton. Remember what place he came in New Hampshire? Second, third, something. He did better than expected. He was the comeback kid from Iowa. You have to resuscitate your campaign. So that means that Mayor Pete, if he holds 3rd place after doing well in Iowa, he's in a good position because who's supposed to win Iowa? Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. You have to do better than expectations to carry some momentum moving forward. That's all that this shows. Here's to show you that I don't make stuff up, that they are whiter than normal, and they're a different kind of voter. Anyone ever been to New Hampshire? They're so conservative they don't even believe in roads. Different type of Democrat. And of course there's this in the background. Okay? Which is going on literally right now. There are 41 votes, 41 members on the House Judiciary Committee. There are only 22 on Select Intel. And the personalities are on House Judiciary Committee. So this will be a fun time, the next 48 hours, in terms of what happens for Democrats. And don't confuse the constitutional term. It's always important as an educator to relay this. High crimes and misdemeanors means high office. It doesn't mean it's a high crime. It means it's a high level of office in terms of influence. That's what the founders meant. Okay, it's in the Federalist Papers. So then the trial moves. The vote that the speaker wants, they had a caucus meeting this morning, no cameras, no cell phones. Whoever speaks out of turn from that caucus meeting this morning will probably lose their place on a committee. But the idea was the speaker laid out this morning that they want to vote before Christmas on this. That's a really tough call. That's a really difficult position, and they're running out of time. Because if they don't get a vote before Christmas, now they have a vote in around the 10th, 8th, 15th, that 1st to 2nd week of January, which puts us smack in the dab of what? Right by Iowa.
So the Democrats need to avoid that, so the calendar is working against them. So again, if the president wants to suppress turnout, what's he want to do between, say, now and the middle of January? Slow the train down as much as possible. And that's exactly what they're moving towards. Voters' view of impeachment. So add up those two numbers, and what do you get on the far right? That number, sorry, for the back of the bus there is 48 and 45. 48 plus 45 equals, thank you, 93. So 7% of the country matters. But this is what you've seen on impeachment. While there seems to be an even break below 50% in terms of support for impeachment, it has tracked up. And remember those suburban women of color with some college and college? That number has more than doubled in terms of level of support or change. The rate of change for that group is high. Their number has soared in that sense. So here's what's happened. While impeachment has remained static or uneven or less than 50%, the notion of re-election or whether he would want to vote for him in re-election, that number against re-election has gone up dramatically. So Democrats have the potential to lose the battle and win the war, but not according to our model. Whether the candidate's position is very important to your position, to your vote, this is in the early contest. This is looking in those 4 early states before Super Tuesday, and whether it matters. And this number far and away shows healthcare as the advantage. But what have Democrats done on healthcare? They had a net 24-point advantage in 2018. Now they're socialists. $8 million in ads have been run in Wisconsin already by the RNC. And the media buy is over $70 million for those battleground states already. To portray Democrats as socialists, in other words, they've given away the 24-point advantage. And if you look at the advantage on healthcare now, Democrats have it +5, +3. They've given away 20 points on the one issue by talking about Medicare for all, which is a very interesting debate for Democrats. So what we're talking about, the people who re-elect the president are what are called persuadables. We call them purple people. I'll be more to the point, we call them liars. And some of you are in the audience. You are socially liberal and economically conservative. Bullshit. We ask you about God, guns, gays and lesbians, and abortion, and you exhibit partisan tendencies. So political scientists who study behavior believe that there aren't too many purple people, that the persuadables are actually quite small, that people exhibit these partisan tendencies in terms of red and blue. And by doing that, especially on key issues, we can essentially create a normal curve of their distribution. The actual number of purple people in the country is about 107,000. They elect the President of the United States. And they live outside of Tampa, outside of Denver, outside of Columbus, and outside of Memphis. And they are more female than not. And there are more of them in college than ever before. And 37% of American households are led by a woman as the top breadwinner in that household. Call that the Me Too movement. And it is changing our politics. It's creating a racial, gender, cultural, educational divide. And these people, these persuadable voters, are Obama voters. President Trump won 200 counties that voted in 2008 and 2012 for Obama. Those are the excerpts. That's an incredible number. 200 counties. And guess what? They're less educated. And as an educator, university professors, what do we say about the less educated? They don't vote. They vote, and they vote pissed. They vote angry. They voted in 2003 for the recall of Ray Davis, and then voted against all of Arnold Schwarzenegger's ballot measures. They defeated 9 out of 10 of them. They vote angry, they're surly, and they have a tendency to flip. They voted for President Bush's re-election in 2004. Then they voted for Obama in 8 and 12, and then they voted for Trump at huge rates in those exurbs or emerging suburbs. We're talking about places like Cloverdale, or just outside of Cloverdale. Not really Petaluma or even Cotati, but kind of Pengrove, just to give you some idea where these places are. There's public support for impeachment. And so those of you that don't like the president or think that he should be impeached, maybe there's a few of you here. What is the difference between now and 1998 and 1973? There is no video or audio evidence. Once there is video or audio evidence, there's some rumors that Democrats have this. It would change the dynamic. If that's going to happen, it has to happen this week or next week. It can't be much later than that. So if the Democrats don't have video or audio evidence, it does exist on that server somewhere. If they have it and can release it, this would be the time to do that. And it does. And Biden's voters don't seem to care about Hunter. Okay, they're more interested in his role on race, his role in the Iraq War. We'll call these people moonlighting Democrats. They're not Democrats. They're socialists. They're Democratic lefties. They moonlight in the Democratic Party. These are the Bernie Sanders people. That's what drives this particular poll. So here are the three variables. Remember these, the students in my room? These are the three variables that drive American politics. Fiscal stress, the battle over what's going on in terms of level of support of governmental intervention, tax measures, ballot measures, getting to pay for city services, especially in the wake of a set of tragic fires. Combined with uncertainty, framing uncertainty. If you don't believe uncertainty is an important variable in American politics, look at any political campaign. This is the marriage of terrorism and political campaigns from my own research as an example. Look at the variable of uncertainty. Google Chuck Norris, his wife, and Obama, 2008 on YouTube. If you elect Obama, it'll be 1,000 years of darkness. If you re-elect Obama, it'll be 1,000 years of darkness. You frame uncertainty. If you vote for her, who will not be named, it'll be the end of days. So vote for me. And we frame political campaigns in this variable of uncertainty, and therefore you vote for me because I have the discretion or judgment. My job in the classroom is to teach judgment. That's my job. My job, mostly now with political reporters, is teaching them how to cover politics. Teaching judgment. How do you teach judgment to your employees? How do you teach judgment to your kids? Judgment is a very difficult thing, but campaigns are designed to inform, which means they are a focus on negative mobilization, or what I call junk food politics. You consume it, and how do you feel afterwards? This is negative mobilization. And it's very helpful. And this is exactly the model that the Trump campaign uses, negative mobilization, because it works. Because people are stimulated and negative, they vote against their neighbors, they don't vote for things, they vote against things. And that means presidential elections are aspirational, but the act of getting people to vote is not aspirational. It's against that or the opposite of that. You don't stop tweeting. You don't change the horse that ran you. And you do it in small towns where those Obama-Trump voters, that's the coalition, the Obama-Trump voters. Of those 107, 109,000 people, there are more women than men. 46% of them that are white and college educated voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Our estimate on all of the economic models and all of the polling models was 33%. They lied to us. But that's a 1/3 error rate. That's not acceptable in terms of our polling, what we're doing. That's a pretty high miss, because it's not socially acceptable to be white, college educated, and vote for Donald Trump. Okay? That's what's going on. So he goes and spends his time, his most precious resource, in small towns, because those folks vote early and often, and they turn out. They live in flyover country, as you know, and where do Democrats live? They live in silos on the coast, all right? So if you're a Democrat and you don't want him to get reelected, move. If you're a Republican, register livestock. All right. In the midst of all of this, there's a broader change going on since 1968, and that is the rise of the middle. The rise of the middle would be, of course, those voters that describe themselves as purple or as independents, the liars. Okay? But notice that that number is higher than it's ever been before. It is a number that sits roughly 42%. It hovers between 40 and 45% as independent voters, those persuadables. Really, those Obama-Trump persuadables. And these are all the things that we got wrong in 2016, just to check myself. We don't think campaign spending matters. Zillionaires spend too much money. He said he spent $100 million, he spent $61 million of his own money. In general, zillionaires are horrible. We didn't think debates mattered. Who was Hillary's running mate? Right, Tim Kaine, right. A couple of you like, oh, wait a minute. And what was their slogan? Which one? They rolled out 7. They rolled around 7 times. Okay, some of you have been in campaigns. You don't do that. And what was his slogan? Make America Great Again. They rolled him out once down the escalator, remember? And it worked. So all of the things that we thought mattered don't. And the things that do matter are these things, like debates. There are 3 scheduled with one vice presidential debate sandwiched in between the first and second. And there's the variable of campaigns. The old white people versus the new Democratic Party. But what's the Democratic Party stand for? They're anti or counter Trump. Okay, that's not aspirational. What do they stand for? That's a real challenge for them, which is why you see these dogs' breakfasts headed to April Fool's Day. Why you see this upheaval. And this is what we do well. Some of you are in government as well. We don't get the government to run well, but we do a great job at electioneering or contrast or difference. I'm better, you're bad. You're frog spittle spawn of Satan, and I'm not. And because of that, you're not going to change your view about how you run the office. Which means if the president wants to get anything done, he has to do it by executive order. He has to argue for a payroll holiday, because he can never get anything through the House. And the coalition that he has in the Senate is fractious, and it holds through impeachment. But after that, it becomes contentious for him to get anything done, which is a real problem when you're out. And this is proof that Democrats don't know what they're talking about. Because they're talking about everything. And he's talking about negativity. My classes tend to be depressing. Shh. Little known secret. Fun, but depressing. Nonetheless, you see the Democrats are all over the map because they're trying to find what works. This behooves the front runners. Okay? It serves at the behest or the difficulty of folks like Cory Booker, who can't seem to break through because he looks like Obama. And I mean that in terms of the candidacy, not his comment. All right, here are those key voters, those Obama-Trump voters, and they're interested in 2 things, the economy and security, and they're worried. And that's even in the wake of al-Baghdadi's, our killing of al-Baghdadi, the leader classes. Here they are, 7 in 10 Trump voters approve of the president's job performance. These are Obama-Trump voters, spineless liars. That's what they are. But they determine election outcomes. And Biden's more popular. But they're not enthusiastic about this old guy. And they prioritize security over all other voters, or a comparison of other voters. And they're in those 200 counties. And what we do is we look at 5 counties. There are only 5 counties that matter. Miami-Dade, Milwaukee County, Maricopa County, which is where? Arizona. And I'll show you 2 others, okay? Those are the only counties that matter. And we can go to specific precincts within those counties to determine what will happen in the presidential election. Wow. Thank you, Obama and Cambridge Analytica. There's the president's approval. He's always underwater. Always. This is at Gallup.com. He's perennially underwater. But his people vote, and they vote at high levels. So if you're Democrats, you want to destroy that number and have that number sit, say, 40, 41, 39, to give some hope. And it doesn't look like an economic recession, maybe an economic slowdown, but an economic slowdown in the last quarter of the year. So if Democrats are hoping that impeachment and the economic recession will help them, it means they have no message. It means they have hope for negativity. It doesn't mean they have hope and change. Real problem. All right, it's all about the economy. This is when you're out. State of the economy. So this will impact things like those tax measures, where the default position is to vote no. So if you need a 2/3 threshold, that means your default position is to vote against your neighbors as much as possible, but you'll cherry pick and maybe vote for one. So a little hint, when you look at any initial polling on any ballot measure that comes out on the ballot, local, statewide, if the initial threshold that you see in that poll is less than 50%, that ballot measure has an almost 80% likelihood of going down, regardless of what it deals with. And those measures that raise taxes have a lower average threshold, yes, they start at the bottom more often than not. And so they have a heavy lift and a heavy pull, which means they compete against each other. All right, here's that rising American electorate. Some of you have seen some of this, and I've updated and made some changes for this. The rising American electorate tries to capture changes in what's going on. It tries to capture changes in people driving by a church, not even going to church on Easter. It tries to capture changes to people who are vegans driving a Prius and aren't wed to political party. And they cohabitate. They don't get married. And they're multi-ethnic. They're not white or non-white. They're not white or Latino or Asian American. They're multi-ethnic. And their educational levels are 3.5 years of college. They don't quite complete college, and they're never going to pay off that student loan, which means they're never going to own a home. And they're pretty worried about what's going to go on. Those folks, more female than not, in the excerpts, favor Democrats currently by 12 points. All right? They're voting for change, but not at the local level, which has important impacts in SUP 3. This is what they look like. What do we call this in geometry class? Amen, a Venn diagram. All right. What we're doing is we're looking for that slice. Okay? We're looking for that slice of that person, and that's the true purple person. That's how we get that 107,000. They're responsible for most of the population growth in the United States, and they are most of, if you notice, the voting eligible population. There are 3.25 million eligible and registered to vote Latinos in the state of Georgia. That means they're changing Georgia. And any of you who've been to Texas, Texas ain't changing. All right, Texas is really red. All right, it's not in Austin, but outside of there, it's really deeply red. But it is changing Arizona. And it is changing lower Florida, not northern Florida or lower Alabama. It's not changing the redneck Riviera, but it is changing lower Georgia, or lower Florida. Okay? And it's changing these areas too, in dramatic ways. So remember, they don't have completed college. They're worried about their paycheck, they're worried about their household. They can't afford a home, so where do they live? In rental units that are affordable, or with their parents, or with a relative. They cohabitate. And as we look at those particular subsets of voters, those are the purple people in the third, or in any district that we look at here. So for example, here's the average number of vacant units. Lisa, I put this in for you. And all the realtors in the room. They're there on the third. So you're trying to find out where they live, okay? And you want to cross-tab that by various demographic indicators. Frequency of vote, whatever that looks like. To target where to walk and where to talk. Some of you might have received the first Shirley Zane mailer. Rob said he told me he'll send 6 to 8 pieces. So that's 6 or 7 more pieces that will come out. There's the occupied rent. And there it is in the third. Now we start targeting. Sorry to be doing your job for you. There you go. You're welcome. There's your mobile homes. Who lives in mobile homes? Regular voters, habitual voters, right? There you go. There's the renter occupied. Look. So this helps Linda, Susan, so forth. Harmon, you welcome. And there's your renter occupied. So you start to lay all these over as pictures, and you start to get a pretty interesting feel for what's going on. And in Santa Rosa, what do we have? District election. So it makes it really easy for us to do this. Okay, there you go. That's sorry about the graphic. That's just to show you that homelessness is a huge issue. And that Sonoma County is an outlier on this. So you got mobile homes, rental units, and homelessness. Housing as the key issue, right? You all know this intuitively. Again, if you want these graphics, let me know. And that's the supervisor's supporters, both for Zane and Corsi. I made this purposely small. I did. And I also took it from earlier in the year, like July. But something's happened in that campaign. And that campaign is Chris is not doing enough to challenge, to take on the incumbent. All right? Seen some data, looked at some polling numbers. He's not doing enough. His early numbers looks like he's got mojo. Looks like he's got big mo. But that's not what we're seeing right now. Okay, in the most recent stuff. Here's the Santa Rosa City Council expenditures for spending money. This is just to show you that we do real data analysis and we track the money. We track particularly independent expenditures. This is in relationship to the IE numbers that are spent for both the supervisorial races and for the city council races. So the way that this works is the IEs have to fund. So if you're the challenger, you need lots of IE money. And if you don't get lots of IE money, it's hard to change the horse that run you. So that means challengers need lots of help from outside groups, whether that's labor and environmental groups, but they don't have any money. Labor's got some, but labor produces pox on all houses. They're good on the negative side, the no side. They're not as good on the yes side. And business groups do better on the yes side, and these numbers reflect that for IE numbers, independent expenditures. The whole idea here is that issues like tax measures, like ballot measures, inflate turnout at the local level by 3 to 5%. And if there are more female voters than not, and they're increasing turnout by 3 to 5%, they're inducing, if you will, a pretty good backlash effect or a pretty good bump into local races. City council, supervisor, Sonoma County, whatever, board of X, city council, planning, all those things, they bump it up at the lower level. If you put ballot measures at the state level, it bumps up turnout by 5 to 7%, usually around 5 or 6%, and up to 8% in a presidential election, which affects everything downstream. And we'll have a robust ballot next November, which will increase turnout in a blue state, which means lots of angry people voting. So you need to get on the ballot, if you could, in March, if you see this, all right? And then we have to take into account these regions, because there are pockets and areas of California that are heavily pro-Trump. It is a diverse state. It is much more diverse than we think. And we have to look at it by this. But what do you want to know about these people? Their age, right? You want to know their age. Not just that they're voting and it's on the rise. And that young people are voting. Sorry, it's hard to say this as a college professor, but young people don't vote. 18 to 22. But we measure them from 18 to 30. So they do vote at 25, and they do vote at 29. But we measure them 18 to 30, which is stupid. And we do this whether we're at Sonoma State or at Harvard. So what we need to do is break up how we poll young people. Because there's a big difference between a 25-year-old after his or her 8th job at that point, and one who's 30, versus one who's 18 to 22 and is interested in just a couple of things. I think you caught my drift. So here's what we need to do. We need to look at the size of the cohorts by who's enrolled in school. So Oakmont votes one way. I used to call it Croakmont, sorry. Now I'm supposed to call it Totemont. So Oakmont votes one way. They vote no on things. And then people with kids in school, like those stressed moms who are living at home and are worried about the paycheck, they're voting a different way because they have kids in school. So you need to look at the size of the cohorts. Because here's what's happening in the country. Where is the non-white population growth? It's in the South. It's in Georgia. It is changing dramatically. Which means if Republicans were smart, what issue would they stop talking about? Immigration. Because the party is perceived to be racist, misogynistic, and homophobic. Sorry. That's the perception. And here is the key graphic. The size of the cohorts. There's the white population. That's older and regular voting. That's over here. The African American population is stagnant. Asian non-Hispanic population is growing. and the Hispanic population is coming of age. Mike Madrid gets this, he's on the GOP side. Some Democrats take this for advantage, or take advantage of it and think about it. But remember, these folks are overwhelmingly one religion. Catholic, how do Catholics feel about abortion? About social issues? How do they feel about government? Small business orientation, family orientation. All of these key components that make them Republicans, but they're not. And they're of a generation here that they don't know about 187 or 209, Propositions 187 or 209, which held out the party for a long period of time. So this is really what America looks like. But let's be a little more learned about this. You want to know depth. So there's the margin by congressional district. Don't make this mistake. Some of you are real political wonks in the room. You have to look at this by county, not by congressional district. Okay? You have to look at this by county. And then closeness of county. So you're interested in like the light blue, pink areas. And you know that his voters live out in the rural areas. And Democrats all live together. It's called a co-op. I was raised in Berkeley in a co-op. And you need to look at it by depth and closeness. So really what America looks like is this. Okay? That's really how you need to look at it. And you need to look at it by likely voters, not registered voters. Registered voters don't matter. Likely voters matter. And that's an art for campaigns, for consultants, for scholars, for pollsters. Likely voters matter. Registered voters are just, registered. I like Bernie, but then I'm not going to vote. That's my son in 2016. All right? And every other young person. Because these things matter, but they're not in our models. That's my daddy 5 years ago, and that's in April, where he was killed a few weeks ago. That's not in the model. McCuan is interested in it. President Merkel this morning, she's interested in it. And the Germans drive Europe. Don't tell the Brits that, but the Germans drive Europe. And they know it. And that matters. Not in our model. And education seems to matter, but not in the way we thought. Those lesser or lower educated voters, those are the folks that are voting angry and surly and anti, and they're worried. So they're voting in the defensive. And it's very easy to get people to vote in the defensive. It means mathematically, for those of you that are really smart about this, that no money, anti-money, has a lot more power mathematically than yes money. So if you're smart, you're on the no side. And those expenditures for city council, those expenditures that we see for IEs tend to be on the no side. It's smart money. Ceteris paribus, everything being equal. These are those 5 counties. Maricopa, Miami-Dade, Kent in Michigan, Beaver County in Pennsylvania, and Milwaukee County. Those are the only 5 counties that matter for those purple people. So you can take these 5 counties, take that 107,000 number and cut it down. And they elect the President of the United States. This is not in the data. I'm almost done here. Republicans won state house seats in 2010, which helped them with the census, which helped them with redistricting, which helped them with the amount of money that they were able to bring in, all of those things. Okay? All of those things. But they're overexposed. They have too many governorships, too many legislative houses. So if you're Democrats and you're a deep-thinking Democrat, what do you really want to do? You ready? Lose the presidential election and gain in the state houses. Run redistricting, gain seats. The Senate is better positioned for you in 2022, which sets up the mother of all elections, which is 2024. That's really what you want to do. And there are a few conscious Democrats that are talking about this, and it worries Republicans. But it means you have 4 more years of Trump. And it means that Ivanka will be the vice president of the United States. It'll be House of Cards. All right, everything about impeachment, let me just run through these real quick. everything you want to know. The Washington Post play-by-play, day-by-day is very helpful on the timeline. Here's where you want to find money, dollars, everything about politics. Start with the green papers. Not green papers, the green papers. Start there. It's the gateway for everything. Delegate rules, everything. Polling, what to pay attention to, money, California, all of that stuff. It's all there. So if you want this, please send me an email. It's an angry email. Let me know. If you call me and you're pissed, I will call you back. I will. I'll be happy to listen to you. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much, man.
Wow. So, I can tell you as president of the Alliance, this is the least expensive campaign available if any of you want to become president. There's still time to file for local offices if you want to fix that. I think Bloomberg just entered, 2 weeks ago, so there's still room federally. We don't have time for questions today. Dr. McCuan said that he will stick around to answer questions. Plus, I encourage you to email him for that information, which was excellent.
Where do we email him?
Yeah, put it on the
Dr.
website.
McCuan.
Can Brian put it up?
All right, we'll send it out. How's that? Glad to see the interest. And again, there's, I think Mayor Schwedhelm is here. He's accepting applications today if you want to apply for the new city council position, right? But anyway, thank you all for coming. I want to thank our elected tweeters that are here in the room. Joe Ravitch with Sonoma County District Attorney, Mark Essex, Sonoma County Sheriff, Mayor Tom Schwedhelm, and Chris Rogers for the Santa Rosa City Council, Herman G. Hernandez with the Sonoma County Board of Education. Thank you all very much for coming. Happy holidays, stay safe, and we'll see you next year.